Captain Alera Marik awoke to silence. Unnatural, suffocating silence. Her head throbbed, and her vision swam as she blinked, trying to orient herself. Darkness stretched out in every direction, broken only by faint, shimmering lines that seemed to pulse in the distance. She sat up slowly, the weight of her body feeling heavier than it should. The floor beneath her was smooth and cold, like obsidian, and it radiated an energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. The chamber they had entered, the alien structure, it was gone. Or at least it seemed to be. Marik instinctively reached for her comm device. "Marik to Vanguard. Do you copy?" Static. Nothing but a faint crackling noise. She frowned, trying again. "Marik to Vanguard. Respond." More static. "Where are we?" A voice broke through the silence. Marik turned to see Commander Kalen Voss struggling to his feet, his cybernetic enhancements flickering with faint sparks of energy. He, too, seemed disoriented, though his expression remained as calm as ever. "I don't know," Marik replied, standing slowly and scanning the area. "We were inside the structure, and then—" "The vortex," Voss finished. "It pulled us in." A groan came from nearby, and Marik spotted Dr. Kira Orlis, wincing as she sat up, rubbing the back of her head. "That was one hell of a ride," Orlis muttered. "Everyone still in one piece?" "Barely," Marik said, glancing around. "Where are the others?" Voss turned on his heel, scanning the empty space. The two security officers who had accompanied them were nowhere to be seen. In fact, there were no walls, no structures, nothing familiar at all. They were in a vast empty expanse, with a low, eerie hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. "Orlis," Marik said sharply, "what happened? What is this place?" Orlis checked her equipment, but the readings made no sense. I don't know, Captain. It's like everything is out of sync. The laws of physics here don't add up. My scanner's going haywire." "This isn't normal space, is it?" Voss asked, his voice steady but edged with concern. "No," Orlis replied, shaking her head. "We've passed through the gateway. We're somewhere else." Marik's gut clenched. The beyond. The alien guardian had warned them about this, had said the gateway led to a place not meant for their kind. And now they were here, with no way of knowing how to get back, or what might be waiting for them. Marik scanned the distant horizon, where faint, shimmering lights pulsed in irregular patterns, like distant stars trapped in a warped space. The air was thin, but breathable. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of their situation. If the gateway had transported them here, there had to be a way to reverse it. "We need to figure out where we are," Marik said, her voice calm but determined. "And we need to find a way back to the Vanguard." "Easier said than done," Orlis muttered, still fiddling with her equipment. "This place is messing with all of our tech. I can't get a clear signal on anything. For all we know, we could be in a different dimension." "Or outside of time itself," Voss added grimly. Marik's thoughts churned. They couldn't afford to panic. Not now. "We'll figure it out," she said firmly. "Let's start by searching the area. There's got to be something here that can give us a clue." They moved cautiously through the strange, empty landscape, their footsteps echoing unnaturally against the cold ground. The shimmering lines in the distance began to grow clearer, and soon Marik realized they weren't just random lights. They were structures, vast towers of light and energy, flickering like they were half-formed, barely holding themselves together. "What is that?" Orlis whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "I don't know," Marik replied, her eyes locked on the towering structures, "but it looks like we're heading toward it." As they moved closer, the atmosphere around them grew heavier, thick with an invisible force that pressed down on their bodies. Marik's breath came in shallow gasps, and she noticed that even Voss, with his cybernetic enhancements, was struggling. "This place, it's draining us," Voss said, his voice strained. Marik could feel it too. Whatever force was at work here, it was sapping their strength, making every step harder than the last. But they pressed on, driven by the need to understand, to survive. Finally, they reached the base of one of the towering structures. Up close, it was even more awe-inspiring, a swirling vortex of light and energy that seemed to pulse with a rhythm that echoed deep within Marik's chest. It was as if the structure was alive, aware of their presence. "We need to figure out what this is," Marik said, turning to Orlis. "Can you get any readings from it?" Orlis approached cautiously, her scanner in hand. "I'll try, but everything's still scrambled." She tapped at the controls, and the scanner flickered, struggling to make sense of the environment. Then, suddenly, the screen stabilized, and Orlis's eyes widened in disbelief. "Captain," she said, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't just energy. It's information." Marik frowned. "What do you mean?" Orlis pointed to the scanner. "The pulses, they're not just random energy bursts, they're data streams. This entire structure is like a giant transmitter, sending information out into, well, wherever we are." "Information?" Voss asked, stepping closer. "What kind of information?" Orlis shook her head. "I can't decipher it all, but from what I can gather, it's incredibly complex, like an archive, a repository of knowledge stored in pure energy." Marik's pulse quickened. "Knowledge about what?" Orlis hesitated. "It's hard to say, but if I'm reading this right, it's connected to the gateways. All of them." Marik's heart raced. "You're saying this is some kind of control center for the gateways?" "Maybe," Orlis replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But there's more. It's not just about controlling the gateways. It's about what lies beyond them. The energy here, it's not from our dimension. It's something else entirely." Voss's expression darkened. The beyond. Before Marik could respond, the ground beneath them trembled, and a low, rumbling sound echoed through the air. The lights in the towering structure flickered, and the energy pulses grew more erratic. "We need to move," Marik said, her voice tense. "This place is unstable." But as they turned to leave, a voice, a deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, filled the air, stopping them in their tracks. "You should not be here." Marik's blood ran cold. The voice was similar to the one they had heard from the Guardian, but it was different, deeper, more powerful. It reverberated through her bones, making her feel small and insignificant in the presence of something far greater than herself. "Who are you?" Marik called out, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. There was a long, oppressive silence, and then the voice spoke again, its tone filled with warning. "You are intruders in a realm not meant for your kind. The seal was broken, the gateway opened, and now you will not escape." Marik's heart pounded in her chest. They had crossed a line, entered a place that was never meant to be found. "We didn't come here by choice," she said, stepping forward. "We're trying to stop whatever's coming through the gateways. If you help us, we can stop it." There was another long pause, and then the voice spoke once more, its tone colder than before. "You misunderstand. The gateways are not to be stopped. They are to be fulfilled. What lies beyond must come." The ground trembled again, and the towering structures began to pulse with greater intensity. Marik felt the invisible force pressing down on her, stronger than before. They were running out of time. "Captain," Voss said, his voice urgent, "we need to get out of here, now." Marik turned, her mind racing. The voice, the presence, wasn't going to let them leave, but they couldn't stay here. They had to find a way back. "We go now," Marik ordered, her voice firm. "Orlis, get us a way out." Orlis was already tapping frantically at her scanner, trying to find a way to disrupt the energy field around them. But the pulses were growing faster, more chaotic, as if the structure itself was reacting to their presence. "I'm trying," Orlis shouted, her hands shaking. "But the energy here, it's too strong." Marik clenched her fists, her mind racing. They had passed through the gateway. There had to be a way back. Then, suddenly, the air around them began to shimmer, and a familiar figure materialized in the distance. Marik's heart skipped a beat. Marik turned, her mind racing. The voice, the presence, wasn't going to let them leave. But they couldn't stay here. They had to find a way back. "We go now," Marik ordered, her voice firm. "Orlis, get us a way out." Orlis was already tapping frantically at her scanner, trying to find a way to disrupt the energy field around them. But the pulses were growing faster, more chaotic, as if the structure itself was reacting to their presence. "I'm trying," Orlis shouted, her hands shaking. "But the energy here, it's too strong." Marik clenched her fists, her mind racing. They had passed through the gateway. There had to be a way back. Then, suddenly, the air around them began to shimmer, and a familiar figure materialized in the distance. Marik's heart skipped a beat. It was the Guardian, the same being they had encountered in the first structure. But this time, its appearance was different. It no longer moved with the same serene grace. Its form was fractured, its once smooth metallic surface marred by cracks of glowing energy that pulsed with every beat of the chaotic forces surrounding them. "You again," Orlis muttered, her voice laced with both awe and dread. The Guardian's glowing eyes fixed on Marik, though its voice was softer now, less commanding. "You should not have come here. The Beyond is not for your kind. Your presence here is dangerous." Marik stepped forward, her fists clenched. "We didn't come here by choice. The gateway pulled us in, and now we're trying to stop whatever is coming through. Help us stop it." The Guardian tilted its head, studying them with an intensity that made Marik's skin prickle. "You misunderstand. What comes through the gateways cannot be stopped. It is inevitable. The seal was meant to protect you, but now that it is broken, the forces beyond will not be denied." Orlis looked up from her scanner, her face pale. "What do you mean? What's on the other side?" The Guardian's eyes flickered, and for the first time it seemed almost uncertain. "The Beyond is a realm of pure energy and thought. It is not bound by your laws of time and space. What exists there is beyond your understanding, beings of immense power, forces that have existed since the dawn of the universe. They were sealed away for a reason." "And now they're coming back," Voss said, his voice low. "Yes," the Guardian replied. "The seal is broken, the gateways are opening, and soon they will return to claim what was once theirs." Marik's heart pounded. There has to be a way to stop them. If these beings are so powerful, why haven't they come through already? Why the signals? Why the delay? The Guardian's form shimmered, the cracks in its surface glowing brighter. "The gateway is not fully open. The energies required to sustain the passage between realms are immense, but the pulses, what you perceive as signals, are calling to them, weakening the barrier between your world and theirs." Orlis's face tightened. "So if we stop the pulses, we can stop the gateway from fully opening." The Guardian's eyes dimmed slightly. "It may be possible, but the cost will be great." "We don't care about the cost," Marik said, stepping forward, her voice resolute. "Tell us what we need to do." For a long moment, the Guardian was silent, its glowing eyes shifting between Marik and the swirling vortex of energy behind them. Then slowly, it raised its hand, pointing toward the towering structure. "There," it said. "The core of this structure holds the key to the gateway's activation. If you disrupt it, the energy pulses will cease and the gateway will close." But what?" Marik pressed. "If you fail," the Guardian continued, "the backlash will tear apart this realm, and possibly yours as well. The forces unleashed by the collapse of the gateway could be catastrophic." Marik exchanged a glance with Voss. "It's a risk we have to take." The Guardian lowered its hand, the cracks in its form pulsing with energy. "I will do what I can to guide you, but be warned, the forces within this structure are ancient and unpredictable. They will not allow you to interfere easily." Marik nodded. "We'll handle it. Just tell us how to shut it down." The Guardian's eyes flickered again, and for a moment it seemed to hesitate. Then it spoke, its voice quieter than before. "There is a conduit within the core, a nexus of energy that powers the pulses. You must sever the connection, but you will only have one chance. Once the process begins, there will be no turning back." "Understood," Marik said, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "We'll find the core." The Guardian nodded, its form flickering. "Go quickly. The pulses are accelerating. You do not have much time." Without another word, Marik turned to Voss and Orlis. "Let's move. We need to find that core before it's too late." They moved swiftly, their steps echoing in the vast, empty chamber as they headed toward the towering structure. The pulses of energy around them grew stronger, more erratic, as if the entire realm was reacting to their presence. Marik's heart raced. They were running out of time, and the fate of their world, and possibly others, hung in the balance. The towering alien structure pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, a deep resonance that echoed through the air, intensifying with each step Marik and her team took. They moved with urgency, guided by the Guardian's cryptic directions, knowing that time was running out. The energy in the realm, the Beyond, seemed to be tightening its grip on them, and Marik could feel her strength sapping with every passing moment. The Guardian, fractured and glowing with barely contained power, hovered behind them. Its once imposing form now seemed fragile, flickering as the forces of the Beyond strained against it. But even in its weakened state, the being exuded a sense of authority, watching them with eyes that glowed brighter than ever. "We're close to the core," Orlis muttered, her scanner flickering in her hands. "The energy readings are off the scale." Marik nodded but kept her focus forward. The room was vast and alien, with walls that shimmered and shifted as if they were not made of solid material but light and energy itself. The deeper they went, the more chaotic the environment became, unfathomable structures rising and collapsing, pathways forming and disappearing in the blink of an eye. As they reached the threshold of a massive central chamber, the pulses of energy became almost deafening. At the heart of the chamber, suspended in mid-air, was a massive nexus of light, an orb of swirling energy, tethered to the walls by glowing, vine-like conduits. It was as if the very fabric of this realm was being funneled into the orb, sustaining it, feeding its power. "That's it," Orlis said, staring up at the nexus. "That's the core." "Looks like it's powering the whole gateway," Voss said, his voice tight. "If we destroy that, the pulses will stop." Marik narrowed her eyes, studying the glowing conduits. "But how do we shut it down without blowing ourselves up along with it?" The Guardian, hovering at the edge of the chamber, spoke softly, its voice now strained. "The Nexus is protected by layers of energy beyond your comprehension. It was designed to be eternal. But there is a way, a disruption within the conduit. It is fragile. Sever the connection, and the collapse will cascade through the entire system." Marik's heart raced. The stakes were clear. They would have one chance to break the connection, one chance to stop the gateway from fully opening. But there was a deeper tension in the air, something unspoken hanging over them. "How do we sever the connection?" Orlis asked, studying the glowing tendrils that fed the core. The Guardian's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment its form seemed to distort, the cracks in its surface growing wider. "You must reach into the Nexus itself, a direct interface with the core's energy matrix." Marik felt a chill crawl up her spine. "And the cost? What happens if we disrupt it?" The Guardian's voice was quieter now, almost mournful. "The Nexus will destabilize, the energy will be released, the collapse will begin. And what happens to this place?" Voss asked, his eyes locked on the Guardian. The Guardian paused for a long moment, then spoke with a tone of finality. "The Beyond will fall." Marik stared at the Nexus, its energy swirling and crackling with incomprehensible power. She had been prepared to risk everything to stop the gateway from opening, but the realization of what that meant weighed heavily on her. The collapse of this realm, the Beyond, could have unimaginable consequences, and yet letting the gateway open would be worse. "We do it," Marik said, her voice steady. "We sever the connection." Orlis nodded, though her hands trembled as she studied the controls on her scanner. "We'll need to calibrate the disruption carefully. If we miscalculate, it could blow before we're ready." Marik turned to the Guardian, her instincts sharpening as she caught a flicker of something in its gaze. "What about you?" she asked, her voice edged with suspicion. "You told us the gateway had tea. Obi stopped. Why weren't you able to do it yourself?" The Guardian's glow flickered again, its form wavering. "I am bound to this place. My purpose is to maintain the balance, to protect the seals, but the power within the Nexus, it has grown beyond my control." There was a pause, and for the first time, Marik felt a deep sense of unease. The Guardian had guided them to this point, but something about its answers felt hollow, evasive. She studied its fractured form, the way it seemed to shimmer with every pulse from the Nexus. "What aren't you telling us?" Marik pressed, her voice cold. The Guardian's eyes flashed brighter, and its voice took on a harder edge. "There is nothing more to tell. You came seeking answers. Now you must act." "No," Marik said, her eyes narrowing. "You're hiding something. What happens when we sever the connection? What happens to you?" The chamber seemed to tremble as the pulses from the Nexus grew louder, more erratic. The Guardian's form flickered violently, and its voice rose, no longer serene. "I am the last of my kind," it said, its tone laced with something darker. Anger, perhaps. "I was left here to guard the seal, to ensure that the Beyond never breached your realm. But the gateway was never meant to be closed again. It was always meant to open." Orlis and Voss exchanged alarmed glances, and Marik felt the weight of the revelation crash over her like a tidal wave. The Guardian had never intended to stop the gateway. It had led them here, to open it. "You lied to us," Marik said, her voice low, controlled, though fury churned beneath the surface. "I did what was necessary," the Guardian replied, its form crackling with energy. "The seal is broken. The Beyond will consume your world, as it was always meant to. I cannot stop it, but you can usher it in." Marik's pulse quickened, her mind racing. The Guardian wasn't a protector. It was a pawn, a slave to the forces of the Beyond, bound to fulfill their will, and it had brought them here to finish what it could not. "No," Marik said, stepping back, her eyes blazing with resolve. "We're not letting that happen." Without warning, the Guardian's form erupted with light, and the room trembled as the energy in the Nexus surged. The walls seemed to bend, the floor rippling beneath their feet. The Guardian's voice boomed, filled with power and fury. "You cannot stop it. The Beyond will not be denied." Marik raised her phaser, but Voss stepped in front of her, his cybernetic eyes flashing. "Captain, no, we need to disable the core first." Orlis was already scrambling toward the Nexus, her fingers flying over her scanner. "We have to move fast. This whole place is about to blow." "Orlis, sever the connection," Marik barked, her eyes locked on the Guardian, whose form was now pulsing with dangerous energy, threatening to unleash its fury. The room shook violently as the pulses reached a fever pitch. Orlis worked frantically, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. Almost there. Almost. The Guardian's form flickered, and it surged forward, its voice a roar of pure energy. "You cannot defy the will of the Beyond." Marik felt the air ripple around her as the Guardian's energy crackled, but before it could strike, Orlis shouted triumphantly. "Got it!" A deafening crack echoed through the chamber, as the conduits connecting the Nexus to the rest of the structure snapped, sending waves of energy cascading outward. The core trembled violently, and the pulsing light flickered wildly before dimming. The room fell silent for a brief, terrifying moment, and then the Nexus began to collapse. "Move," Marik shouted, grabbing Orlis by the arm as the entire chamber began to shake. The ground beneath them buckled, and the swirling lights of the Beyond flickered like dying stars. The Guardian, still standing near the core, let out a low, furious growl, its form destabilizing as the energy in the room surged and twisted. He doomed us all." Marik's heart raced as they sprinted back toward the exit, the room collapsing around them. The very fabric of the Beyond was coming apart, unraveling under the strain of the collapsing Nexus. Behind them, the Guardian's voice echoed through the crumbling chamber, its final words chilling. "The Beyond is not finished with you. It will never be finished." Marik didn't look back.